So today we will study the HEXACO, which is an alternative to the Big Five model, and the aim of the HEXACO was to find dimensions of personality which were more independent to one another than the 5 domains of the Big Five, which are slightly correlated. So we will see that we can discover 6 domains of personality and not 5 according to the HEXACO model. So the HEXACO model has 6 domains, and in each domain 4 facets. And the difference is mainly on agreeability, because agreeableness in the HEXACO has a domain called honesty, humility, and another domain which is called agreeableness. Now we will start with honesty, humility. So honesty, humility is the first domain, and it has 4 facets to it: sincerity, fairness, greed avoidance, and modesty. So as for sincerity, it is the fact of being genuine in interpersonal relations. For example, the fact of not flattering others, but of being unwilling to manipulate them. Then you have fairness. Fairness is the tendency to avoid fraud and corruption. It is the refusal to have gained through cheating or stealing. It is the fact of being unwilling to take advantage of others individuals. Then you have greed avoidance. Greed avoidance is being uninterested in possessing lavish wealth, luxury goods, and sites of high social status. For example, it is the refusal of displaying wealth and privilege. And it is the fact of being not especially motivating by monetary or social status considerations. And finally, fourth, modesty. Modesty is being modest and unassuming. It is the contrary of feeling superior and of being entitled to privileges. People high in modesty view themselves as ordinary people without any claim to special treatment. So that was honesty, humility. Then the second domain is emotionality domain, which is akin to the neuroticism domain of the Big Five. So there are 4 facets, being fearful, anxiety, dependence, and sentimentality. So fearfulness is the tendency to experience fear. People low in fearfulness have little fear of injury and are relatively tough, brave, and insensitive to physical pain. People high in fearfulness are strongly inclined to avoid physical harm. Now, anxiety. Anxiety is a tendency to worry in a variety of contexts. People low in anxiety have little stress in response to difficulties, and people high in anxiety are preoccupied even by relatively minor problems. Dependence. It is the need for emotional support from others. So people low in dependence are self-assured and able to deal with problems without any help. People high on dependence want to share their difficulties with those who will provide encouragement and comfort. And finally, fourth, sentimentality. Sentimentality is the tendency to feel strong emotional bonds with others. Low in sentimentality, little emotion, goodbye, or in the reaction, or interest in the conscience for others. And people high in sentimentality have strong emotional attachments and are empathetic and sensitive to the feelings of others. So this would be a part of agreeableness in the Big Five. Now, as for extraversion, Extraversion has 4 facets also: social self-esteem, social boldness, sociability, and liveliness. Social self-esteem is the tendency to have positive self-regard, particularly in social context. People high in this facet are satisfied with themselves and consider themselves to have likable qualities. People low in this facet have a sense of personal worthlessness and see themselves as unpopular. Social boldness, it's the tendency to have confidence within a variety of social situations. People low in social boldness feel shy in positions of leadership or when speaking in public, and people high in social boldness are willing to approach strangers and willing to speak up within group settings. So it corresponds to assertiveness in the Big Five, in the extraversion domain of the Big Five. Now, sociability. Sociability, enjoy conversation, social interaction, and parties. People low in sociability prefer solitary activities and do not seek out conversations. And people high in sociability enjoy talking, visiting, and celebrating with others. So this would correspond to gregariousness. And liveliness. Liveliness is people high in liveliness are enthusiastic and energetic. People low in this facet tend not to feel especially cheerful or dynamic. And people high have a sense of optimism and high spirits, so it corresponds to the facet cheerfulness of extraversion in the Big Five model. Now, agreeableness. The domain of agreeableness has 4 facets. First, forgiveness, the willingness to feel trust and liking towards those who have caused harm. People low in forgiveness hold a grudge against those who have offended them. People high in forgiveness are ready to trust others again and to reestablish friendly relations after having been treated badly. Gentleness is the tendency to be mild and lenient in dealing with others. People low in gentleness are critical in their evaluation of others. People high in gentleness are reluctant to judge others harshly. So this would go with compassion and the second aspect of agreeableness in the Big Five domain. Flexibility scale, willingness to compromise and cooperate with others. People low in flexibility are stubborn and are willing to argue. People high in flexibility avoid arguments and accommodate others' suggestions even when unreasonable. In patience is the tendency to remain calm rather than to become angry. People low in patience tend to lose their tempers quickly. People high in patience don't express their anger easily, so it would go to neuroticism and especially to volatility in the Big Five. Now, conscientiousness. So conscientiousness has organization, diligence, perfectionism, and prudence. As for organization, it's a tendency to seek order, particularly in one's physical surrounding. So people low in organization are sloppy and haphazard. People high in organization keep things tidy and prefer a structured approach to tasks. So this would correspond to being orderly as a facet of the conscientiousness domain of the Big Five. Diligence is the tendency to work hard. People low in diligence have little self-discipline and are not strongly motivated to achieve. And people high in diligence have a strong work ethic and are willing to exert themselves. So it would correspond to the aspect of industriousness in the consciousness domain of the Big Five. Now, perfectionism. Perfectionism is the tendency to be thorough and concerned with details. People low in perfectionism tolerate some errors in their works and tend to neglect details. People high in perfectionism check carefully for mistakes and potential improvements. Now, prudence. Prudence is a tendency to deliberate carefully and to inhibit impulses. People low in prudence have impulses and tend not to consider consequences. And people high in prudence consider their options carefully and tend to be cautious and self-controlled. So it would be the facet of cautiousness, liberation in the consciousness domain of the Big Five. And now the openness to experience domain, aesthetic appreciation, inquisitiveness, creativity, and unconventionality. Aesthetic appreciation is one's enjoyment of beauty in art and in nature. So people low in this facet tend to not become absorbed in a work of art or natural wonders, and people high in aesthetic appreciation have strong appreciation of various art forms and of natural wonders. Inquisitiveness is a tendency to seek information about and experience with the world. Low in inquisitiveness, people have little curiosity about the sciences. For example, high inquisitiveness are widely interested in travel, for example. Now, creativity is the preference for innovation and experiment. People low in creativity have little inclination for original thought, and people high in creativity will seek new solutions to problems and express themselves in art, for example. And unconventionality is the tendency to accept the unusual. People low in unconventionality avoid eccentric or non-conforming persons. People high are receptive to ideas that might seem strange or radical. And finally, there is a domain or facet which is not well put in any of the other 6 domains, which is altruism. Altruism is diffused on the 6 others. It's a tendency to be sympathetic and soft-hearted towards others, so it's an aspect of agreeableness in the Big Five. People high in altruism avoid causing harm and react with generosity towards those who are weak or in need. And people low in altruism are not upset by the prospect of hurting others and may be seen as hard-hearted.